You don't honestly realize that some pretty warped, powerful people rip off some other people and get away with it?
Not always. But...
Wake up and smell the coffee. In this life, powerful, warped people get away with murder. And if they can hire a high-priced, talented enough lawyer, they will get away with murder.
I don't agree with that example. Just because someone is a moral relativist does not mean that they have to allow themselves to be victimized by other people who happen to have a different set of ethics.
That's not the point.
That is the point.
No, it is
That's
not.
the example you use.
No, it is not.
I'm not going to let someone steal my bike because I think it's wrong. I don't care if they think it's right, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to go and say, well, you grew up in a culture that steals bikes as a sign of being a young man and breaking into manhood and being a warrior, and that's what you do as a tribal custom, and that's wrong, and I'm going to imprison you. No, I'm going to accept that as their culture and their set of ethics. Doesn't mean I'm going to be victimized.
It's not my point. My point is, if I believe that morality is relative, it does not matter whether I pull out my wallet, give him a $20 bill, or whether I pull out a knife and stick it in his back. And when I begin to understand that because morality is relative, it doesn't matter whether I give him $20 to get his dinner or whether I stick a knife in his gut, I begin to realize how absurd and meaningless life really is. And that's what the majority of my atheist friends are unwilling to grapple with. But that's what that woman was willing to grapple with. If morality is relative, it doesn't matter whether you're Adolf Hitler II or Mother Teresa II. It really doesn't matter. It's just an issue of what do you choose? And if you want to choose to be Adolf Hitler II, that's your choice. If you want to choose to be Mother Teresa II, that's your choice. It's all relative. And when you begin to grapple with that, you begin to realize how meaningless your life really is. And then you got to ask yourself, why continue to live? It's all meaningless.
Cliff, from your own worldview, it wouldn't matter if someone was Adolf Hitler or if someone was Mahatma Gandhi, because they're both going to die when God comes and brings down the brimstone.
That is absolutely false.
How's Gandhi?
I, as a follower of Christ, look at Gandhi, and first point is, I respect him highly, because he understood that morality really is real. But he got his understanding that the caste system was wrong, not from the Vedas. He got it from the Sermon on the Mount. And I abhor what Adolf Hitler did. And I respect Gandhi highly. And I disrespect Hitler for what he did. And I don't know what Gandhi or Hitler decided about Jesus before they died. So I don't know whether Gandhi's going to be in heaven or hell. I don't know whether Hitler's going to be in heaven or hell.
Gandhi was a Hindu, and Gandhi's not going to be in your idea of heaven. Gandhi's not going to be there.
Gandhi was very familiar with the New Testament. He read the New Testament extensively. And before Gandhi was assassinated, I don't know what he decided about Jesus. And neither do you. Neither does anybody. So I don't know whether Gandhi's going to be in heaven or hell. I don't have the faintest idea.
Does an in-bed conversion make up for a lifetime of immoral actions?
Absolutely.
Well, when Jesus was bleeding and dying on the cross, two thieves were hung on either side of him. First thief turned to him and said, "Come on, miracle boy from Nazareth, little miracle dust. Get us off these crosses, and then we'll believe in you." Second criminal turns to the first criminal and says, "You fool. We bleed and die here because we deserve it. But this Jesus, he's the innocent, holy, pure Son of God." And that second criminal turns to Jesus and says, "Remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus doesn't turn to him and say, "Get lost, scumball, you've lived a horrible life." No. Jesus says, "I tell you the truth, today you'll be with me in paradise." So yes, if on your deathbed you genuinely are sorry for your wrongdoing and you sincerely put your faith in Christ, he'll accept you. Clearly. Good. I like this guy. I'm waiting. Okay? Here's my problem. Hey, man, I'd love to be your friend 40 years from now. But I'm genuine. I'd really like to be your friend 40 years from now. I should join the other hypocrites, guys. And if you think you can treat God that way, you're a flaming phony. The same way I'm a phony, if I look this guy in his face and say, "You know, but I'd really like to be your friend 40 years from now." You have good reason to question my sincerity. Yes, God, I'd love to get serious with you 40 years from now. Well, why don't you join the other hypocrites?
So it has to do with suffering, but it's not suffering brought on by man's free will, in the sense that there are tidal waves and there are earthquakes that cause thousands of people to die, and among those there might be righteous people. How does that fit in with God's omnibenevolence?
Okay. Genesis chapter 18. God tells Abraham, I'm going to wipe out Sodom and Gomorrah because of their evil. Abraham prays, enters conversation with God. Says, well, what about if there are 50 righteous people? You're still going to wipe it out? God says, no, for the sake of 50, I won't. What about 45? No, I won't. 40? No, I won't. 35, 30, 25, 20. What about 10? If there are 10 righteous people, are you going to still wipe it out? And God says no. Why didn't Abraham go? 9, 8, 7, 6. I don't know. But obviously what Abraham was struggling with is the question that he asks, will not the judge of all the earth do right? What a tremendous chapter in Genesis, chapter 18, where Abraham struggles with the justice of God. Will not the judge of the whole earth do right? Right now in Genesis chapter 18, we have a very specific example of God judging evil. But the Bible also communicates that there is a lot of suffering that is not the direct result of sin. It is not God judging evil. For instance, John chapter 9. As he went along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked Jesus, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Neither this man nor his parents sinned, said Jesus, but this happened that the work of God might be displayed in his life. An example of suffering not being the direct result of God judging. People ask me, Cliff, do you think that AIDS is God's judgment of the homosexual? No way. Why? Well, because I ask myself questions like, why is it more frequent that male homosexuals get AIDS than female lesbians? What about an Arthur Ashe who gets HIV from a blood transfusion? What about a child born with HIV? To conclude when you see suffering that is God judging it is an incorrect assumption. And that was exactly the mistake that Job's counselors made. Job was suffering, and his buddies automatically concluded, Job, the reason you suffer is because you're a sinner and God's judging you. And at the end of the book of Job, Job had to pray that God would not strike his buddies down for their incredibly self-righteous, inaccurate conclusions. So yes, suffering happens, not because God is judging anybody at times. At times, suffering happens because we live in a cursed, chaotic, unjust, unfair, messed up world. You watch Schindler's List. You don't go walking out of the movie theater saying, tra-la-la, the Nazis murdered a few Jews. Tra-la-la, the Nazis murdered a few Jews. No. After watching Schindler's List, you go walking out of the theater reeling with moral indignation over the atrocities committed in Dachau and Auschwitz.
Would you think some KKK member would say the same, or some, neo-Nazi would say the same?
Well, I don't really care who says that gassing Jews is right. My conscience convicts me to the root of my being that gassing Jews in Dachau and Auschwitz is absolutely wrong. It's not wrong because I'm an enlightened American who's gone to university. That's for sure. It's absolutely wrong because there's a value of justice created and defined by God. There's a human dignity given all human beings by God, including Jews, and that is totally violated by Dachau and Auschwitz and Buchenwald.
I think we could conclude that with our own, ideas.
You cannot conclude that it's absolutely wrong. You can conclude it's relatively wrong from your perspective as an educated University of Washington student. You think the Holocaust is wrong. Fine. But that's just your opinion. You're not more right than a Nazi.
It's absolute, but you don't know it's absolute.
Well, I am convinced it is absolutely wrong because my conscience kicks into high gear and I reel with moral indignation over rape of a woman, over the slaughter of Jews in Dachau and Auschwitz. And that experience is very real to me.
What about the slaughter of the world? What about that? What about at the end of Revelation? What about when God comes and wipes out the world? Wouldn't that be just as wrong?
No, because when God wipes out evil, that is a clear statement that justice will ultimately win. If there is no God, if there is no day of judgment, if there is no heaven or hell, evil ultimately wins in this world.
Well, Cliff, weren't those Jews that were wiped out in Auschwitz, since they were not Christians, wouldn't they be killed by God anyway at Revelation? I mean, say Revelation was to come in 1946, after Adolf Hitler committed all those atrocious crimes. Wouldn't God just come and kill all those Jews anyway if they wouldn't have been killed? In addition to myself, and in addition to all the Muslims, in addition to all the Buddhists, in addition to everyone else on the face of the planet except the small minority of us that happen to believe in Jesus Christ?
The Bible never answers the question, how is God going to judge those who never hear about Jesus? And the Bible insists there are going to be a lot of Jewish people in heaven who never did hear about Jesus. Hebrews 11 lists a few of them by name. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Rahab, a Gentile prostitute. Obviously never heard about Jesus. They were born 100 years before him. But in humility, they put their faith in God, and they'll be in heaven. The point of judgment is, because God is good, evil will ultimately lose. I am very grateful for that. If you're an atheist, if you're an agnostic, you've got to acknowledge evil ultimately wins in this life. Oh, really? You don't honestly realize that some pretty warped, powerful people rip off some other people and get away with it?
Not always, but
Wake up and smell the coffee. In this life, powerful, warped people get away with murder. And if they can hire a high-priced, talented enough lawyer, they will get away with murder.
thinking that they ripped up people, and don't you think they would expect same thing to happen to them? It's
Sir,
not possible.
if morality is relative, and if you believe that strongly enough, it doesn't matter what you do with your life. You can rationalize anything.
But if I thought, if I could get away with, ripping off people, wouldn't I expect somebody else that could do that same thing to me? So wouldn't I try to just live a normal life or good life so that others could, live the same way?
All right.
I don't need a religion telling me what
Right.
to do.
You don't need my answer to that, okay? What you need is you need to go see Woody Allen's flick, Crimes and Misdemeanors. Crimes and Misdemeanors is a tremendous movie that answers your question perfectly. It's about an ophthalmologist who has a wonderful wife and wonderful family. He also has a mistress on the side. One day the mistress sends a letter to his wife, exposing him. The ophthalmologist gets the letter, rips it up, talks to his brother who's in organized crime. What should I do with my mistress? She's threatening to expose me. Brother says, let me take care of her. Jewish ophthalmologist struggles. Should I allow my brother to murder my mistress, to protect my reputation, protect my nice practice and nice family? His Jewish rabbi says to him, remember, sir, God is always watching. He suppresses that. He says to his brother, take care of her. His brother wipes her out, murders her. He's got to recover some articles from their apartment. He has to step over her dead body. Her eyes are open with that death gaze. Suddenly he realizes there's no difference between the Nazis who gassed Jews in Dachau and Auschwitz and me. Then there's a time lapse. And the conclusion of the movie is the ophthalmologist is sitting around the table with his wife and children. Everybody's smiling, laughing, having a great time.
What if I don't agree with that?
If morality is relative, if there is no God, you can get away with murder. You can sear your conscience, and you can have a great time.
Well, I don't believe that's true.
Oh, yes, it is true.
I should-
But it's all relative. And if there is no God, life is a crapshoot, a meaningless accident. So if you really believe that, there's nothing wrong with murdering a mistress if she's threatening to expose you. But if there is a God in heaven who really is watching you, who you will have to answer to one day, then it really does matter. Because it means that evil is not ultimately going to win.
I don't necessarily think evil's ultimately gonna win.
If there is no God, if there is no day of judgment, sir, you don't have to be a white racist American to know that evil ultimately often wins.
You don't need religion to say what's wrong or what's right. If I think something's right, it's right.
No, it's just relatively right, according to your own bias. Well, then it's not really right, and it's not really wrong. It's relatively right, relatively wrong.
But if I don't, I mean, I wouldn't do that, but you wouldn't do that either. If I do the same thing that you would do without me having faith in God, but do the same thing you would do, isn't that the same?
Why can't it be your morality without God?
You can't have morality with God, without God, but you can't have a moral absolute without God. Who defines an absolute?
People define everything.
Well, then if people define morality, then there's obviously no moral absolute. Morality is based on the person's opinion, which means it's relative. You cannot have a moral absolute if there is no God.
Morality
simple.
changes from culture to culture, Cliff.
What? And if there is no God, morality is relative.
I have a theory for you.
Why is it so much more rational for you to believe in a God that just has always existed, rather than just believing in chance?
Okay. My experience of life teaches me order and design does not come about by chance. Take 10 pennies, number them 1 to 10, drop them in your right pocket, pull them out sequentially. I'm not going to stand around holding my breath waiting for you to pull it off. Order and design do not come about by accident. Your textbooks don't come about as a result of an explosion in a printing factory.
If existence is just as likely as non-existence, right?
Existence is just as likely as non-existence?
Yes.
What does that mean?
It means they're just as, each one is just as possible as the other.
No, ma'am. I would disagree. My experience tells me that if I want a beautiful painting, it's just not going to happen. It's going to take a highly gifted artist to paint that painting. I'm going to have to shell out some money because I don't have that talent. It's not just going to happen.
But that's looking at it in a bird's eye view, you know? I mean, it's not looking at the overall picture of all possibilities.
Well, ma'am, to be honest with you, my experience slams me repeatedly over the head with order and design demand, necessitate some type of intelligent mind. Now, I know anything's possible. I know that a beautiful artwork could just happen as a result of paint falling on a
How
canvas.
do you explain that God just existed and always has?
You see, in answer to the question, what is eternal? We only have 4 options that I know of. So I've got to take the best option. First option, in the beginning, there was nothing. But Mary Poppins, that great philosopher, sang, nothing comes from nothing. Nothing ever could. She's right. If in the beginning there was nothing, you don't get something coming from nothing.
Yeah, so how do you get God?
So I don't accept that option. Second option, in the beginning there was matter and energy. Matter and energy are eternal. My problem with that is free will, love, conscience that ties me into moral absolutes, shows me that there's more to reality than just matter and energy. Third option, in the beginning there's an intelligent mind. God or gods. Creates order and design, steps back and could give a rip about what happens. That's deism, a la Thomas Jefferson. Fourth option, in the beginning, intelligent mind creates, actually loves you and loves me. That's what Jesus Christ revealed.
But if you're saying that there is a beginning and there is an end, where's the beginning of God? It's and God. I mean, in the Bible it says there is no beginning and no end.
Exactly. God is eternal. And that doesn't satisfy you. That's why I gave you the 4 options. See, it's a very difficult question you're raising, which is, what is eternal? What was around before we existed? And I only know of 4 options. Nothing, matter and energy, intelligent mind who could give a rip about you and me. Fourthly, intelligent mind who loves you and who loves me. That's what Jesus Christ insisted. So which of those 4 options do you believe, and why?
Well, I don't believe that there. My question isn't how do we believe that we exist, but how do you believe that God exists?
How do I believe that God exists?
Yeah.
Because the evidence points to God's existence. What is that evidence? The order and the design of the cosmos points to some type of intelligent mind. Secondly, moral absolutes point to some type of mind.
There aren't any absolutes.
All right, if there are no absolutes, then live your life that way. Date rape is not absolutely wrong, it's relatively wrong. So don't reel back with moral indignation over date rape as if it's absolutely wrong. If morality is relative, date rape is wrong from your perspective, but obviously from the rapist's perspective, it's okay. It's all relative. I don't think you're willing to live that out.
Well, it's unfortunate, but yeah, I don't feel like there is any significance to me.
Okay? But when you watch Schindler's List, don't you walk out of the movie theater reeling with moral indignation over the atrocities of Dachau and Auschwitz? I don't think you walk out of the movie theater after watching Schindler's List saying, it's all relative. No. Your conscience kicks into gear, and you say, gosh, the slaughter of Jewish people that way. Horrendous. Good. Keep that conscience in gear.
That's an impossible thought. In the overall picture, it's still insignificant. I mean,
The slaughter
to you,
of Jewish
it
people in
seems
Dachau and Auschwitz
significant.
is insignificant?
Relative to you, it's significant.
Okay, you're right. If you can honestly stand there and look me in the face and say, the slaughter of the Jews in the Holocaust is insignificant, then you've taken away one of my pieces of evidence for God's existence. You're right. Obviously what I'm doing with this gentleman and with you is I'm trying to go to your gut. But I'm trying to say, come on, guys, you know down deep that maybe there are not many moral absolutes, but at least there are a few. And if you can look me in the face and say, no, they're not, I'm insignificant, Jews are insignificant, and it's all relative, then you've taken away from me one of my pieces of evidence for the existence of God. But see, my point is, I don't think you're willing to live what you say out, because you know it doesn't work.
Well, I'd rather not, but that's just what I believe.
Okay, then you've probably considered suicide?
Yeah, but I mean, what would be the point still?
Okay, but that's Camus' point, right? When you begin to really understand what you're saying, how insignificant life really is, how morality really is totally relative, then Camus points out the only question modern man must answer is, why not commit suicide? In light of the insignificance of life, why suck wind? Why eat 3 meals a day? Why keep trucking? You follow that line of thinking? Well, I want to tell you thank you. Because I am so sick and tired of these other guys walking around here telling me that, oh no, there is no God, but I'm significant at all. I respect you highly for your courage and your intellectual consistency, ma'am, and it's an honor to talk with someone like you. The majority of my atheist friends kick back and say, oh no, there's no God, but human life has significance. And rape is absolutely wrong. And I've got about that much intellectual respect for them, but I've got a truckload of respect for you, ma'am. So thank you for your honesty and for your consistency. I respect you a lot. Now, I would just plead with you, ma'am. I think there's a part of you at some point, when you're confronted by the Holocaust, that cries out, that is wrong. Okay, I'm asking you to grab onto that part of yourself. Because I think that part of yourself is in touch with reality. It is wrong to slaughter innocent Jews like that. And the part of you, your conscience, that enables you to understand that it's really wrong, that conscience points to maybe not many, but at least a few moral absolutes. And the only way there can be a moral absolute is if there is some type of God to create and define it. Now read the Gospels and look how Jesus treated people. And I think deep within you, when you check out how Jesus treated people, something's going to resonate. And you're going to say, yeah, that's the way we should treat each other. And then look at Jesus communicating that God really loves you and that you are significant because he created you to live for eternity in a love relationship with himself. And I know you might be thinking, this is too fantastic to believe. This is too good to be true. But if you just keep on studying the Gospels and looking at Jesus, I think when you begin to see that he died and then rose from the dead, that, whoa, the evidence is he's pretty reliable. Does that make any sense?
It makes sense, but it's still hard for me to believe.
Uh-huh. Well, I can't thank you enough, as I tried to articulate earlier, for your honesty and your courage in facing the logical consequences of your worldview.
They wanted to give themselves value. So humans create a God and write a Bible, giving themselves value. Isn't it kind of a biased viewpoint? Humans don't want to feel like slime on a rock, so they want to make something up that gives them value. This is God. Oh, now we're valuable. If a squirrel wrote a Bible, I'm sure they would write it the same way, but oh, now squirrels are so valuable, not humans.
Jesus did reveal that God created us to love him and to love each other. Love, in order to be real, must be free. If love is not free, it is not love. If you've been dating a young lady for the past 6 months, if she said to you, I love you, and tonight your father calls you up and says, son, I've been paying her $1,000 a month to love you, you'd be royally bummed. Love, in order to be real, must be free. So Jesus revealed, God created you and me to love him, which demands free will.
But I'm atheist, so he created me to burn me.
No, you don't have to be atheist.
But that's what I believe. I'm using his gift of free will and rational thought, the one thing I have that the squirrel doesn't, to rationalize that there is no Christian God.
Good.
So he gives me this free will, and I'm using his gift.
You bet.
And he decides to burn me. So who would he want to burn more? Someone who doesn't use his gift? Why not burn the Christian? When he takes pleasure in burning me, obviously, because he gives me something, rational thought I use, to decide there's no God. Oh, well, now I'm going to burn you. He gives the Christian rational thought also, who doesn't use it. What more reason to burn them? They're not even using the gift he gave them. The one thing that makes him different from the monkey, the rational thought, the ability to rationalize and logically think out arguments.
Sir, nobody is going to hell because they exercise rational thought.
But that's what I'm doing. I'm rationalizing that there is no Christian God. And you said if I don't accept Jesus, right, he's not going to save me. I didn't even ask this guy to die for me. But okay, so he's dying for me and I'm not accepting it. So I'm not going to be saved. I'm going to go to hell, right? I rationally thought that out. I used God's gift to rationally think that out. And now I'm going to be burned for it. I'm being punished for using something that was given to me.
Okay, it's a very good definition of sin. Sin is me taking a legitimate gift that God has given me and using it for an illegitimate purpose. Sexual immorality. I take a legitimate gift that God gives me, my sexuality, and I use it in an illegitimate way. I take a legitimate gift, a rational mind, and I use it in an illegitimate way to run away from God.
So what tells me how to use my rational thought? The Bible?
No. Exercise your conscience.
Right, and this conscience he gave me too. My conscience says there's no Christian God.
How does your conscience tell you there's no God?
I don't feel a God. I don't feel wrong when I do something that the Bible says is wrong. I don't feel guilty for being a human.
Have you ever felt guilt?
Have I ever felt? Obviously, yeah, I felt guilt for sure.
Okay.
I made a mistake, whatever. Fine,
All right.
I feel guilt.
So your experience of guilt should tell you there are some moral absolutes that you have broken. I don't know what they are, but your guilt informs you there's something that you've done wrong. There's a moral absolute that you violated. Next step is, the only way there can be a moral absolute is if there is some type of God to create and define that absolute. No God, morality is relative, it's just made up by the human mind. But your conscience has informed you, no. There really is a moral absolute, and I violated it, that's why I experienced guilt. See, that's a strong piece of evidence that indeed God exists, some type of God.
Okay, maybe some type of God, but why the Christian God?
Oh, well, that's the next
and
question.
Again, why did he create me just to burn me? We never even answered that. What? I'm using rational thought, I'm using conscience, whatever.
Okay, well, if we're going to use rational thought, we have to start at the beginning. And the beginning is atheism or theism. So are you with me? Are you no longer an atheist? Are you some type of theist?
I've never been in, well, I think it's like a little bit presumptuous to say I've got everything figured out. There is no God absolutely, right? So I'm not going to go all the way atheist. I would say I'm closer to agnostic. Because obviously I can't possibly comprehend a supernatural omnipotent being.
Right, none of us can.
Exactly. So I'm not going to go, there is none or there is one. Either way, it seems a little bit extreme. How can I possibly comprehend? We're so small. The universe is so gigantic.
Okay? But you can't totally understand another human being, neither can I. That doesn't mean we can't have a relationship with another person. So just because we can't totally comprehend God doesn't mean we can't have a spiritual relationship with God.
It doesn't necessarily mean you can either.
No, that's right. But you can't use that as leverage to run away from God. You're right. None of us can totally understand God. But that fact does not demand that we can't know God at all.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this episode. Hit that subscribe button. We love for you to join the family. Also, want to invite you to our church in New Canaan, Connecticut. It's New Canaan High School, and it meets Sundays at 9:30 a.m.